I'm 100% team Johnny Nansen. If only because, we talked a little bit last night. Should the players be involved in making this decision? Usually that answer is kind of a no.
Usually a hard no.
Yeah. In this case, I believe Arizona should 100% be in go for it now mode. 100%. If Johnny Nansen is the guy who can retain Noah, retain T-Mac, keep the core mostly intact, and they can go out and compete and win big next year, go for it now. I don't care about if something happens, if he's not a capable head coach and you have to worry about it and make a decision in 2025, 2026, whatever. Arizona has a rare opportunity to do something super special in 2024, and they should absolutely go for it.
Sure.
Well, I could say that on Jamino's note, there was a players only meeting this morning, just posted it, and you are going to see a coordinated message to hire Johnny Nansen. That was basically all the meeting was about. And there are multiple players. T-Mac was at the meeting, and we'll see if it's true, but there are players that are telling people if Nansen is the guy, they are likely to stay. So if that's the case, it's going to be harder for Dave Heeke and Robbins to not hire Nansen.
And I know that right now the alums are pissed at Jed. Nansen also very much pleases all the alums who have been a big part of this rebuild in the last few years.
Right, for sure. We need that.
And Mike, if you bring back Johnny Nansen, Dwayne Aquina is not going to go to Texas. Dwayne Aquina will be here.
Yes. And one thing, too, that we also need to look at is that if you bring those guys back, I am totally in on generally the thought of, all right, you don't want to bring in a coach just because a player, just because the coach, all that stuff. I get all that. This is a unique situation, though, at Arizona. This isn't Alabama. This isn't something where, all right, well, don't worry. A coach can you hire the best coach and you take a loss for a year or two, and then you're going to be right back. This is go for broke. You go in 2024, you go for broke, and then and then you revisit it. Maybe you find out Nansen can't coach. Who knows? Or maybe it does work, but I'll tell you one thing. I'd much rather take my chances if Johnny Nansen can coach or not with that roster than taking an unknown or somebody that goes 7-7 everywhere they go.
Yeah, and it's I'm not a fan of keeping everything together just for a year because I don't know if there's any guarantees. Like I mentioned yesterday, like what if Noah and T-Mac get $1 million offer in the spring and they go, you know what, let's just take it. And then you hire Johnny Nansen for what, right? But Jamina makes a good point. Like, let's be honest, no matter what, we're probably doing this again in 3 years for a good reason or a bad reason. So you might as well make your run and see what happens.
Yeah, and there are a lot of quality head coaching candidates out there. Jason, I know you've got the hot board and all that. Most of those people are fine, qualified head coaches who have done good jobs and probably could at Arizona. But this isn't a fantasy team. We're dealing in the real world. We're dealing with people and personalities and relationships. And as I look at it, there's only one guy who makes the most sense in that regard. And that's still going to be Johnny Nansen.
Yeah. And so yes, that just makes it easier for me in this case, because again, I keep, it's funny. The last 2 days, I've just kind of become at a loss for everything, but listen, here's what it comes down to for me with Johnny Nansen. Arizona is not a destination school for football. We can be honest here. It's a good spot, but it's not a destination spot. Nobody is saying that, I'm going to go to Arizona and I will never leave because I want to win a national championship at Arizona. That's just not in the cards. But what Arizona does have is they have a very unique opportunity with an absolutely loaded roster next year to be able to compete for a Big 12 championship. And not only do they have that opportunity, let's be honest, some players will leave. I get it. But if Noah Fafita and T-Mac stay at Arizona, there's going to be a lot of players that are going to stay with them as well.
Yeah, I think it's just like when Noah committed for the 2022 class. There's always one guy in the class who leads everybody else and gets everybody else involved. Yeah, if those two decide to stay, I think the vast majority of people players will stick around. But does that fit with what you're hearing, Jason?
Yeah, I believe that. Again, I don't know if I believe it, but like T-Mac was at that meeting. Noah Fafita was at that meeting. That I know for a fact. And I will say there's another interesting, and I don't know if I could tie two things together, but Dave Heeke had a scheduled meeting with the team this morning and postponed it. And I thought that was very interesting. I mean, maybe they're heavily considering it, and the reason he postponed it is because they're finalizing stuff already. I mean, it would nothing would surprise me.
That would be a save. And honestly, and let's be honest here, Dwayne Aquina, that's Anthony's guy. And there's really no most people are Anthony's guys, let's be honest here. But with Dwayne Aquina, that if you can retain him, you can retain this coaching staff. I feel very comfortable, at least going into next year, having his mind on that defensive staff. If you got Noah Fafita, you got T-Mac, you got a good percentage of that roster coming back. I think the offense takes care of itself. This is something that I think I'm all in on Johnny Nansen. I don't even think, to be honest with you, that there's a close, I can't even really think of a close second if you give the time period and what's going on as it pertains to Arizona football.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I want to be clear. If the administration who has worked with Johnny Nansen for multiple years now, if they don't think he's in the range of acceptability as a head coach, they shouldn't hire him. I'm not saying hire him just because he might keep a few dudes around. But if they have a good relationship with him, they think he can do the job, there's no reason to say no. That we can close this deal today.
Yes. And listen, I don't think that I'm really saying I don't think I'm saying anything out of pocket, but they were prepared to offer, or they offered Johnny Nansen almost $1 million to be able to stay. So they clearly don't look at him as somebody that is a liability on the staff. They clearly look at as him as somebody that was an asset. So, again,
I mean, I see some things in the chat here. It's like, well, why did he just leave then? Well, we know this is a relationship business.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he had a great past relationship with Sark. I'm just going to leave it there. It's a relationship business. Why would he go elsewhere?
Right. Sheer, are you in? Are you in on hiring Johnny Nansen, Sheer?
I wouldn't hate it. I would hire Nansen over Carroll. Is that good enough?
All right.
I would hire, if you're giving me the coordinator route, I'm 100% hiring Johnny Nansen over Brendan Carroll. Because at least I know Johnny Nansen has called to play before. Brendan Carroll's never called to play. I'm not sure if he's drawn up a play. So, you bring back Aquina, you work with Aquina, you hire a heavy Polynesian staff. They'll always recruit the Polynesians. Every Arizona fans love it. You could do worse than Johnny Nansen. You could do better. Right. You could do worse too.
All right, I'm also going to say something here, and I've had enough people tell me this that I think I'm more than okay that I think it's more than okay saying this, that Johnny Nansen and Jed Fish didn't necessarily see eye to eye the way that Sarkisian and Johnny Nansen said. Again, this is, I don't know if somebody's upset with Johnny Nansen for leaving, but a big part of that also is that, he and Fish just didn't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. Then to me, you're kind of speaking out of both sides of your mouth, which I actually excel at, but go ahead.
Well, you know who else that people now love who left Arizona twice? Dwayne Aquina.
Right.
I mean, obviously he was brought in right after Makovic was hired, and that relationship lasted like 2 weeks.
Right.
Before Dwayne left. And then remember when Mike Stoops brought Dwayne back. Mm-hmm. Those two also did not see eye to eye. So right. Dwayne left soon after being hired, which left Arizona in a tough spot at the time. And then Mike Stoops, gave the DB job to the next person he saw, which happened to be Ryan Walters, which turned out to be a good hire. But nobody is bemoaning Dwayne for leaving a couple of times. Everybody loves him now.
Right. And
so why would we apply a different standard for Johnny Nansen?